The fire burned low in the cavern beneath the mountain. Shadows moved against the walls like living things. They were not shadows at all. They were the last of the shamans, the secret protectors of mankind, and they had gathered here to die. Olivia stood at the center of the great stone circle. Her body was old, bent by thousands of years of life and rebirth. But her eyes burned with power that made the flames seem weak. She had lived more lives than any human could count. She had watched empires rise and fall like waves upon a shore. Now she would watch no more. "Brothers and sisters," she said. Her voice was soft, but every shaman in the cavern heard it as clearly as thunder. "The time has come. The darkness grows stronger with each passing year. Our enemy no longer sleeps." The shamans knew of what she spoke. They could feel it in their bones, in their very souls. The warp, that strange dimension that existed alongside the world of flesh and matter, had become a hunting ground. Things lived there now. Hungry things. Things that fed on human emotion and grew fat on human suffering. For countless generations, the shamans had died and been reborn. When their bodies failed, their souls would travel through the warp and return to the world in new flesh. It was their sacred gift, their eternal duty to guide humanity through the darkness. But now that gift was failing. 3 more of us were lost this season, Olivia continued. Their souls never returned. The ruinous powers caught them between death and life and devoured them whole. We are becoming fewer. Our enemy becomes stronger. Soon there will be none of us left, and humanity will stand alone against the storm. A young man near the back of the gathering stepped forward. His name was Revelation, and though his body appeared no older than 20 summers, his soul carried the weight of many lifetimes. "Perhaps standing alone is what humanity must learn to do," he said. "Perhaps we have guarded them too long, protected them too much. They will never grow strong if we never let them face the darkness themselves." Olivia smiled at him with something that might have been sadness or might have been love. "You speak wisdom, young one. But you have not seen what I have seen. The creatures in the warp do not simply want to kill humanity. They want to enslave it. They want to turn every human soul into food for their endless hunger. Without guidance, without protection, our people will fall into worship of these monsters. They will become willing slaves to their own destruction." Revelation fell silent. He could not argue against what he knew to be true. He had seen the cults already forming in distant lands. He had watched humans sacrifice their own children to things that promised power and pleasure. The infection was spreading. "There is only one path forward," Olivia said. "The prophecy that has passed from teacher to student since the very first of us awakened to our power. We must perform the final gathering." Gasps echoed through the cavern. The final gathering was known to all of them, but it was spoken of only in whispers. It was the last resort, the ultimate sacrifice, the ending of everything they were. "If enough of us die at the same moment," Olivia explained, though all present already knew, "our souls will not scatter through the warp. They will merge. They will become something new. Something powerful enough to stand against the darkness. We will create a guardian for humanity. A shepherd to lead them through the long night ahead." "And if the prophecy is wrong?" Revelation asked. His voice cracked with emotion he could not hide. "What if we create something terrible? What if this guardian becomes worse than the enemy we seek to defeat?" "Power corrupts, Olivia. We have all seen it. The more power a being possesses, the greater the temptation to abuse it." "That is the risk we must take," Olivia replied. "Better to gamble on hope than surrender to certain destruction. The entity we create will carry all our memories, all our wisdom, all our love for humanity. Surely that must count for something." Revelation wanted to argue more, but he saw the determination in the eyes of his brothers and sisters. They had already made their choice. They had lived for so long, died so many times, that death held no fear for them. Only the thought of their enemy's victory could make them tremble, and so the preparations began. Across the world, in hidden places known only to the shamans, the faithful gathered. In frozen northern lands and burning southern deserts. In dense forests and on lonely islands. Thousands of them, tens of thousands, all linked by the ancient psychic bonds that made them one people. Olivia led them in the final meditation. She felt their minds touch hers, felt their souls align with a purpose that transcended individual existence. The love they shared for humanity flowed between them like a river of golden light. "Remember why we do this," she whispered to them all. "Remember every child you have watched take its first steps. Remember every farmer you have blessed with good harvest. Remember every dying elder you have comforted in their final moments. We are doing this for them. For all of them. For every human who will ever live." The moment arrived. Across the world, the shamans released their hold on life. Some stopped their hearts through sheer will. Others took poison prepared for this sacred purpose. A few simply let go, their souls slipping free from bodies that had carried them for too long. The warp screamed. The creatures that lived there felt the surge of power and rushed toward it like sharks drawn to blood. But they were too late. The souls of the shamans were already merging, already becoming something beyond their reach. In a small village in Anatolia, a woman named Maria was grinding grain for the evening meal. She had never been pregnant. She had no husband, no lover. But suddenly a pain greater than any she had known ripped through her body. She screamed and fell to the ground. Her neighbors rushed to her side. They saw her belly swelling before their eyes, 9 months of growth happening in mere moments. The oldest woman in the village recognized what she was seeing, though she could not explain how such a thing was possible. "Get hot water," she commanded. "Get clean cloth. The child is coming." The birth was quick but difficult. Maria screamed until her voice gave out. The child came into the world in silence. That he did not cry. He did not thrash or wail as newborns do. He simply opened his eyes and looked at the women gathered around him. His eyes were gold. Pure, burning gold, like twin suns captured in a human face. The oldest woman made a sign against evil. The others stepped back in fear. But Maria, exhausted and bleeding, reached out her arms. "Give me my son," she said. They placed the child in her arms. He looked up at her with those terrible, beautiful eyes, and for just a moment, something changed in his gaze. Something that might have been recognition. Or gratitude. Or sorrow. Then the moment passed, and he was simply a baby again. Strange, yes. Unnatural, certainly. But still her child. "I will call you light," Maria whispered to him. "For you came to me in darkness, and you shine brighter than anything I have ever seen." Far away, in the cavern beneath the mountain, Olivia's body lay cold and empty. But her soul, merged with thousands of others, looked out through infant eyes at a world it had sworn to protect. The immortal emperor had been born, and somewhere in the warp, the ruinous powers felt a new presence enter the game. They did not know fear, for they were fear itself given form. But they knew competition when they sensed it. The great game had gained a new player. The other children ran and laughed in the village square. They chased each other between the mud brick houses. They threw stones at birds and splashed in the shallow stream that ran past the grain storage. They were children, and they acted as children do. The boy with golden eyes sat alone beneath an olive tree and watched them. He was 7 years old now, at least in body. In mind, he was something else entirely. Within his skull lived the memories of tens of thousands of shamans. He remembered building the first fires. He remembered watching the ice retreat from the northern lands. He remembered the birth of language itself, those first moments when sounds became meaning and meaning became thought. He remembered everything. And the weight of it crushed him. Maria came to him with bread and dried figs. She sat beside him and stroked his hair as any mother would. She did not understand what her son truly was. She only knew that she loved him, and that he was different, and that these two things did not have to contradict each other. "You should play with the others," she said gently. "You are always alone. Children need friends." The boy looked at her with those golden eyes. I have friends, mother. You cannot see them, but they are always with me. They speak to me in voices that only I can hear. Maria felt a chill despite the warm afternoon sun. The village elders whispered about her son. They said he was touched by spirits. Some said angels, others said demons. She did not know which was true. She only knew that he had never once cried since the day of his birth, and that frightened her more than anything else. "What do your friends tell you?" she asked. "They tell me about the world," the boy replied. "About the darkness that surrounds it. About the things that wait in that darkness, hungry for human souls. They tell me that I must protect our people. That is why I was born." Maria wanted to tell him that he was only a child, that protection was the duty of grown men with spears and strong arms. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something ancient looking back at her. Something that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations she had never heard of. "Then you must grow strong," she finally said. "And when you are grown, you will do what must be done. But for now, eat your bread. Even guardians must eat." The boy smiled at her, and for just a moment, he looked like a normal child. Then the smile faded, and the weight returned to his gaze. The years passed, the boy grew into a young man, tall and strong, with features that seemed to shift depending on how the light fell upon them. Sometimes he looked like any other villager. Other times he appeared almost divine, radiating an aura that made people want to kneel before him. That he learned to control this effect. He learned to hide what he truly was. The memories within him taught him the value of secrecy. The shamans had always worked in shadow, guiding humanity without humanity knowing they were being guided. He would do the same, but some things could not remain hidden forever. A warlord named Kairos ruled the lands east of the village. He commanded an army of brutal warriors who took what they wanted and killed anyone who resisted. Word of the strange boy with golden eyes had reached his ears. Such a creature would make a valuable prize, either as an oracle to predict the future or as a sacrifice to please the dark gods Kairos worshipped in secret. The army came at dawn, the villagers had no warning. They woke to the sound of war horns and the screaming of horses. Armed men poured through the streets, cutting down anyone who stood in their path. The women were dragged from their homes. The men who tried to fight were slaughtered without mercy. Maria ran to her son. She found him standing in the doorway of their house, watching the carnage with eyes that showed no fear. Only sorrow. Only the terrible weight of knowing what had to be done. "Hide," she begged him. "They are looking for you. If they find you, they will take you away, or worse." "I cannot hide anymore, mother," he replied. "I have hidden for too long already. These people are suffering because of me. Because word of my existence spread to those who would use me for evil purposes. This is my responsibility." He stepped out into the chaos of the burning village. A warrior on horseback spotted him immediately. The golden eyes marked him as the prize they sought. The warrior charged, raising his bronze sword to strike the boy down if he tried to run. The boy did not run. He simply raised his hand. The warrior and his horse stopped as if they had struck an invisible wall. Then they began to burn. Not with natural fire, but with something far worse. White flames erupted from within them, consuming flesh and bone and metal in seconds. When it was over, nothing remained but ash drifting on the morning breeze. The other warriors saw this. They hesitated. The boy walked forward, and with each step, more of them died. He did not touch them. He did not even look at them directly. He simply willed them out of existence, and existence obeyed. Kairos himself rode to face this threat. He was a huge man, scarred by countless battles, devoted to the dark powers that whispered to him in his dreams. He felt no fear of death, for his gods had promised him eternal reward in return for his service. "What are you?" he demanded as his army fell around him. The boy looked up at him. "I am the answer to every prayer your victims ever made. I am the judgment they begged for in their final moments. I am the protector of humanity, and you are an enemy of everything I was born to defend." Kairos laughed. "I serve powers greater than you can imagine, child. The gods of the warp itself whisper my name with pleasure. You are nothing compared to their glory. I know your gods, the boy replied. I know them better than you ever will. I know their names and their natures and the lies they tell to enslave the weak-minded. And I know that they fear me, warlord. They fear me because I am the one thing in this universe they cannot control. He raised both hands, and Kairos screamed, the warlord's body twisted and broke. The dark marks he bore on his skin, gifts from his gods, burned away like paper in a furnace. The connection to the warp that had given him strength was severed with surgical precision. For the first time in decades, Kairos felt truly alone, then he felt nothing at all. When the killing was finished, the boy stood in the center of the village, surrounded by the bodies of an entire army. The villagers emerged from their hiding places and stared at him with a mixture of awe and terror. His mother was the first to approach him. She walked through the dead without looking down, her eyes fixed only on her son. When she reached him, she placed her hand on his cheek. You did what you had to do, she said simply. I know, he replied. But this is only the beginning. Word of what happened here will spread. More will come. They will come seeking me, seeking the power I possess. And I must be ready for them all. He looked around at the frightened faces of the villagers, the people he had grown up among, the people he had protected. They would never see him as one of them again. They would see him as something other. Something above. Something to be worshipped or feared. This was the price of power. The shamans had known it. Now he knew it too. I must leave this place, he said to his mother. I have stayed too long already. My presence brings danger to everyone around me. Maria nodded. Tears ran down her face, but she did not ask him to stay. She understood, somehow, that her son had never truly been hers. He belonged to something larger. Something she could not comprehend. Where will you go? She asked. The boy who would become the emperor looked toward the horizon, toward all the lands and peoples that waited beyond it. Everywhere, he said. I will go everywhere, and I will do what must be done. I will guide humanity through the darkness, whether they know it or not. I will be their shepherd, their protector, their guardian. He kissed his mother's forehead. Do not mourn for me. I will always be with you, in a way. I will always be with all of you. Then he walked away, and the villagers watched him go until he was nothing but a distant figure against the rising sun. The immortal emperor had begun his long journey. 10,000 years of labor waited ahead of him. He would take many names. He would wear many faces. He would guide empires and destroy monsters and prepare humanity for the future he could see coming. Behind him, Maria watched until her tears blurred her vision completely. She whispered a prayer to God she had worshipped all her life, asking them to protect her son. She did not know that her son was destined to become greater than any god she had ever imagined. 3,000 years had passed since the boy left his village. In that time, he had walked across every continent and sailed upon every sea. He had taken hundreds of names and worn hundreds of faces. To some he appeared as a wise elder. To others as a young warrior. To a few, he revealed his true golden-eyed form, but only when it served his purpose. That he had watched humanity grow from scattered tribes to great civilizations. He had guided some of that growth from the shadows, planting ideas in the minds of thinkers and destroying cults that sought to worship the ruinous powers. But for all his efforts, the darkness in the warp continued to strengthen. Now he stood on a cliff overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, watching ships carry traders between the young empires of the age. The wind whipped at his robes, but he paid it no attention. His mind was focused on a presence he sensed approaching from behind. You know I am here, said a voice like grinding stone. You have known since I began following you 3 days ago. The emperor did not turn around. I know many things. I know what you are, though you wear a human face. I know who sent you. I know what you will offer me. And I know what my answer will be. The presence moved closer. If any ordinary human had looked at it, they would have seen a tall man with bronze skin and eyes that flickered with inner fire. But the Emperor saw what lay beneath the disguise. He saw a fragment of something vast and hungry, a splinter of consciousness from an entity that dwelled in the warp itself. "The Lord of Change sends his greetings," the creature said. "He has watched your progress with great interest. You are not like other mortals. You carry the souls of thousands within you. You possess power that rivals the gods themselves. My master believes you could be a valuable ally." "Your master believes I could be a useful servant," the Emperor corrected without emotion. "He dresses it in prettier words, but the truth remains the same. The Chaos Gods do not have allies. They have tools and slaves and victims. Nothing more." The creature circled around to stand before him. Its human disguise flickered for a moment, revealing glimpses of feathers and beaks and too many eyes. "You misunderstand. My master offers partnership, not servitude. Together, you could elevate humanity to heights beyond imagination. You could make them into gods themselves, powerful and eternal and free from the weaknesses of the flesh. Free from everything that makes them human," the Emperor said. "Free from love and hope and the capacity for growth. Your master's gifts always come with hidden costs. The power he offers would transform humanity into something twisted and monstrous. I have seen what happens to those who accept such bargains." He finally turned to face the creature directly. His golden eyes blazed with an inner light that made the demon flinch despite itself. "Go back to your master," the Emperor commanded. "Tell him that I refuse his offer. Tell him that I will never serve the powers of chaos. Tell him that I will dedicate every moment of my existence to protecting humanity from his corruption. And tell him that one day, I will find a way to destroy him utterly." The creature hissed with sudden fury. Its human disguise shattered completely, revealing the twisted demonic form beneath. It raised clawed hands that dripped with warp energy. "You think yourself so mighty," it snarled. "But you are still mortal. You can still be killed. My master will simply wait until you are gone, and then humanity will be his." The Emperor smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Your master knows nothing of mortality. Neither do you. Let me educate you." He raised one hand, and the demon screamed. The Emperor did not simply destroy the creature. He unraveled it, pulling apart the threads of warp energy that held it together. He examined each strand, learning from it, understanding the nature of his enemy more deeply with every passing moment. Then he allowed the demon to disperse back into the warp, carrying his message and his warning. When it was done, he stood alone on the cliff once more. The encounter had confirmed what he already suspected. The Chaos Gods were growing impatient. They sensed that something was changing in the mortal realm, that humanity was beginning to develop in ways that might eventually threaten their dominion. They wanted to corrupt or destroy him before he became too powerful to stop. That he could not fight them directly. Not yet. The warp was their domain, and there they were nearly invincible. He needed weapons of a different kind. Weapons of science and technology and knowledge. Weapons that could protect humanity without feeding the dark powers that feasted on conflict and suffering. The Emperor began to walk. He had work to do. The millennia that followed were filled with constant effort. The Emperor moved through human history like a ghost, appearing where he was needed and vanishing before anyone could understand what he truly was. He studied with the greatest minds of every age. He learned the secrets of medicine and engineering and warfare. He guided human development away from the paths that would lead to ruin. When the dark age of technology dawned, he was ready. Humanity had finally reached the stars. Great ships carried colonists to distant worlds. Machines of incredible power served human needs. Artificial intelligences ran the vast networks that connected the scattered worlds of the human domain. It was an age of wonders beyond anything the ancient shamans had ever dreamed possible. The Emperor walked among the scientists and engineers of this golden era. He wore the face of a young researcher, brilliant but unremarkable, working in laboratories where the fundamental nature of reality was being explored. He steered them away from the most dangerous discoveries, the ones that would tear holes in the fabric of space and let the warp pour through. But he also learned everything they could teach him that in secret. He began his own project, deep beneath the mountains of Terra, in chambers that no human had ever seen. The Emperor built his laboratory. He combined the psychic knowledge of the shamans with the scientific advances of the age of technology. He studied genetics and biology and the nature of the soul itself. He was preparing for what he knew was coming. The age of technology could not last forever. Humanity was spreading too fast, developing psychic powers without understanding them, creating machines that flirted with the boundaries of the warp. Sooner or later, the bubble would burst, and then the darkness would come. The Emperor had lived for thousands of years by this point. He had watched countless friends grow old and die while he remained unchanged. He had formed connections only to watch them severed by the passage of time. Each loss had hardened him, taught him to keep his distance, to view individual humans as parts of a greater whole rather than as people worthy of love. He told himself this was necessary. He told himself that attachment was a weakness he could not afford. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, he remembered his mother's face. He remembered the warmth of her hand on his cheek. He wondered if she had died thinking of him, wondering where her strange child had gone. He could not afford such thoughts. He pushed them away and returned to his work. The laboratory grew. 20 glass containers now lined the walls of the deepest chamber, each one filled with a glowing liquid that pulsed with psychic energy. Within each container, something was growing. Something that carried the Emperor's own genetic material, modified and enhanced beyond anything humanity had ever created. His sons. His primarchs. The generals who would lead humanity's armies against the darkness. He had designed each one for a specific purpose. Warriors and builders and diplomats and scholars. Each one would be a demigod in human form, immortal and powerful, capable of inspiring armies and conquering worlds. Together, they would help him unite humanity under a single banner and protect them from the horrors of the warp. The project was nearly complete when the Age of Strife began. Warp storms erupted across the galaxy, cutting off human worlds from each other. The artificial intelligences that humanity had relied upon turned against their creators in a war that devastated entire star systems. Psychers, humans born with the ability to touch the warp, emerged in greater numbers than ever before, and with them came demonic incursions. Terra itself was plunged into chaos. The great civilization that had flourished there collapsed in fire and blood. Warlords with atomic weapons carved out petty kingdoms from the ruins. Mutants and monsters roamed the wastelands. The Golden Age became a nightmare almost overnight. The Emperor watched it all from his hidden laboratory. He could not save everyone. He could not even save most of them. All he could do was protect his project and wait for the storms to pass. Then the disaster struck. He felt it like a knife in his heart. A massive surge of warp energy tore through his laboratory, powerful enough to pierce even his defenses. The containers holding his primarchs shattered. His sons, still incomplete, still growing, were ripped from their vessels and scattered across the galaxy. The Chaos Gods had made their move. The Emperor stood among the wreckage of everything he had built. 20 years of work. Centuries of planning. All of it destroyed in a single moment of violence. He did not scream. He did not weep. He simply began to clean up the mess. Somewhere out there, his sons were growing up on alien worlds. They would become warriors or kings or monsters, shaped by environments he had never intended for them. They might serve humanity, or they might destroy it. He would have to find them, one by one, and hope that enough of them could be saved. But first, he had to save Terra itself. The unification wars awaited. The immortal Emperor climbed out of his ruined laboratory and looked upon a world drowning in blood. He had lost his children. He had lost his perfect plan. He had not lost his purpose. Humanity would be united. Humanity would be protected. And the Chaos Gods would learn that their victory was far from complete. The wasteland stretched to the horizon in every direction. Nothing grew here. The soil itself was poisoned by centuries of atomic warfare and biological weapons. The sky hung gray and heavy, choked with dust that never seemed to settle. This was Terra, the birth world of humanity, reduced to a nightmare of suffering and death. The Emperor walked through this desolation without fear. His golden armor gleamed despite the grime in the air. His eyes scanned the landscape, seeing not what it was, but what it could become. What it would become, if he succeeded in his mission. That he found them huddled in the ruins of what had once been a great city. Refugees, hundreds of them, starving and desperate. They had fled from a warlord called Caligan the Tyrant, whose armies had swept across the region killing everything in their path. These survivors had nowhere left to run. The Emperor approached their camp. The guards raised their makeshift weapons, spears made from salvaged metal and clubs fashioned from broken concrete. They were brave, these humans. Brave and doomed. "Who are you?" demanded a woman who seemed to be their leader. She was thin and scarred, with eyes that had seen too much horror. "If you come from Caligan, know that we will fight to the last breath." The Emperor smiled at her, and something in that smile made her lower her weapon. "I do not come from Caligan. I come to offer you something better than death. Something better than survival." "There is nothing better than survival," another refugee said. "In this world, survival is all that matters." "You are wrong," the Emperor replied. "In this world, survival means nothing if there is no purpose behind it. You survive today only to die tomorrow. You flee from one tyrant only to fall victim to another. This is not life. This is merely the postponement of ending." He looked at each of them in turn, and each one felt as if those golden eyes were seeing directly into their souls. "I offer you purpose. I offer you a cause worth fighting for. I offer you the chance to rebuild what has been destroyed, to create something that will last for 10,000 years and beyond." The woman studied him for a long moment. "You speak like a king. But I see no army at your back. I see no fortress protecting you. How can you offer anything when you have nothing?" "I have everything that matters," the Emperor said. "I have knowledge. I have power. And I have the will to use them for humanity's benefit. Come with me, and I will show you what these things can accomplish. Stay here, and you will die within the week. Caligan's scouts are already closing in." It was not an easy choice. But for people with nothing left to lose, any hope was better than none. The refugees gathered their meager belongings and followed the stranger in golden armor into the wasteland. What followed was the beginning of a legend. The Emperor led them to his hidden fortress in the mountains that had once been called the Himalayas. There, in chambers carved from living rock, he revealed the first of his thunder warriors. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the result of his genetic experiments, humans transformed into something greater through science that bordered on the miraculous. The Thunder Warriors were huge, standing head and shoulders above normal men. Their muscles rippled with power that could crush stone. Their reflexes were faster than any natural human could achieve. They were living weapons, created for one purpose, to conquer Terra and unite humanity under a single rule, but they were also unstable. The Emperor had created them too quickly, without the refined techniques he had planned to use for his primarchs. The genetic modifications that made them powerful also made them violent, unpredictable, and short-lived. They were tools to be used and then discarded when they broke. The Emperor did not share this truth with anyone. He simply pointed them at his enemies and let them loose. Caligan was the first to fall. His army, which had terrorized an entire region, was destroyed in a single night of blood and fire. The Thunder Warriors tore through his soldiers like wolves through sheep. Those who surrendered were given a choice: join the Emperor's growing force or die. Most chose to join. Word spread across the ruined world. A new power was rising in the east. A golden warrior who fought alongside monsters and offered mercy to those who submitted. Some called him a god. Others called him a demon. All agreed that he was unlike anything Terra had seen before. The Emperor used both fear and hope with equal skill. To the warlords who opposed him, he was a terrifying enemy who showed no mercy to those who resisted. To the common people who suffered under those warlords, he was a liberator who offered food, shelter, and protection. Both images were true. Both served his purpose. The years of war continued. One by one, the great powers of Terra fell before the Emperor's advance. The Ethnarchy of the Caucasus. The Indonesic bloc. The Nordific conclaves. Names that had seemed eternal were erased from history, replaced by the spreading dominion of the Imperium. Not all victories were achieved through force. The Emperor was a master of politics and manipulation. He turned enemies against each other. He made alliances that served his purposes and abandoned them when they no longer did. He lied when necessary and told the truth when lies would not serve. He did whatever was required to achieve his goal. Some who served him questioned his methods. They had joined believing in a noble cause, only to find themselves complicit in atrocities that haunted their dreams. The Emperor listened to their concerns with patience. "Do you know what waits for humanity if we fail?" he asked one such doubter, a general named Arik who had been with him since the beginning. "Not merely death. Death would be a mercy. The powers that lurk in the warp want humanity to suffer forever. They want to transform every human soul into food for their eternal hunger. Every compromise I make, every crime I commit, is nothing compared to what will happen if I do not succeed." Arik looked at his master with troubled eyes. "And what happens to us when we succeed? Will we be able to live with what we have done?" "No," the Emperor replied honestly. "We will carry the weight of our sins until we die. That is the price of building something greater than ourselves. I do not ask you to feel good about what we do. I only ask you to understand why we do it." It was not the answer Arik wanted. But it was the only answer the Emperor could give. The final battle of the Unification Wars was fought against the last stronghold of resistance on Terra. The fortresses of the Ursh had withstood everything the Emperor threw at them for nearly a decade. Their leader, a twisted creature who had made pacts with the powers of the warp, commanded armies of mutants and cultists who fought with fanatic devotion. The Emperor led the assault personally. His Thunder Warriors crashed against the enemy defenses like a golden tide. For 3 days and 3 nights, the battle raged without pause. The dead piled so high in some places that soldiers fought on hills of corpses. In the end, the Emperor faced the Lord of Ursh alone. The corrupted warlord threw everything he had at the Golden Warrior, calling upon demonic powers that should have been enough to destroy any mortal being. It was not enough. The Emperor killed him with a single blow, a sword strike that severed not just body but soul. The demon thing that had worn human flesh dissolved into screaming wisps of energy that fled back to the warp. When dawn broke on the 4th day, the war was over. The Emperor stood in the ruins of the last fortress, surrounded by the bodies of his Thunder Warriors. So many had died in this final push. So many would never see the world they had fought to create. An aide approached him carefully. The Emperor's armor was drenched in blood, some his own, most belonging to his enemies. His golden eyes stared at something far away. "My lord," the aide said. "We have received word from the astronomers. The warp storms are finally beginning to subside. The galaxy is opening again." The Emperor did not respond immediately. He was looking at the faces of his fallen warriors, these imperfect creations who had given everything for his dream. "And from my laboratory?" he finally asked. "What news?" The aide hesitated. This was the question he had dreaded. "The containers have been breached, my lord. Your sons are gone. Something took them during the height of the storms. We do not know where." The Emperor closed his eyes. For just a moment, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of his loss. 20 children, stolen before they could even know their father. Scattered across a galaxy full of horrors, growing up among strangers who could never understand what they truly were. Then the moment passed. "Prepare the fleet," the Emperor commanded. "Send word to the genesmiths. The Space Marine project will proceed using the genetic template we retained from the Primarchs. We cannot wait for our sons to be found. Humanity needs protectors now, not in some distant future. And the Thunder Warriors, my lord? What shall become of them?" The Emperor looked at his aide with eyes that held no warmth. "They have served their purpose. Their instability makes them unsuitable for the wars ahead. They will be given an honorable end." The aide bowed and withdrew, not daring to question what honorable end meant for warriors too dangerous to be allowed to live. The Emperor walked out of the fortress alone. Somewhere above, the stars were waiting. Somewhere out there, his sons were growing into men who might be allies or enemies. The unification wars were over, the Great Crusade was about to begin. The throne room of the imperial palace was vast beyond human comprehension. Its ceiling disappeared into shadows so high that clouds could have formed there. Its walls were decorated with gold and marble and precious stones gathered from every corner of Terra. It was a monument to victory, to the unification of humanity's birth world under a single ruler. The emperor sat alone in this magnificent chamber, and he felt nothing but emptiness. The celebrations continued outside. His generals and advisors toasted to the glorious future. His soldiers sang songs of triumph. The people of Terra danced in streets that had known only war and suffering for longer than any of them could remember. Everyone celebrated except the one who had made it all possible. He should have been proud. He should have felt satisfaction in what he had achieved. Instead, he thought only of what had been taken from him. 20 sons. 20 demigods crafted from his own flesh and soul, designed to be the greatest generals and leaders humanity had ever known. He had poured centuries of knowledge and love into their creation. He had dreamed of the day when he would stand beside them, a father surrounded by his children, ready to bring order to a galaxy drowning in chaos. Now they were scattered across the stars, growing up among strangers. Some might be raised by kind people who would nurture their potential. Others might fall into the hands of tyrants or monsters who would twist them into weapons of destruction. He had no way of knowing which fate had claimed which son. The Chaos Gods had made their move with devastating precision. They could not destroy the Primarchs outright, for the Emperor had built protections into their very souls. But they could scatter them, plant them like seeds in soil that might grow poison instead of fruit. It was a gamble, but the dark powers had always been gamblers. A servant approached the throne. The Emperor sensed her fear, her awe, her desperate desire to please. He was used to such reactions. He had not been treated as a normal human being for thousands of years. "My lord," she said, kneeling so low that her forehead touched the cold stone floor. "The Genesmiths request your presence in the laboratorium. The first generation of Space Marines has completed their transformation. They await your inspection." The Emperor rose from his throne. "Tell them I will come." The Space Marines were his answer to the loss of the Primarchs. Using genetic material preserved from his sons, he had created a new breed of warriors. Not as powerful as the Primarchs themselves, but far superior to ordinary humans. Fast enough, strong enough, dedicated enough to fight the wars that were coming. He had organized them into 20 legions, each one built from the genetic seed of a different Primarch. When he found his sons, if he found them, each would have an army waiting for him. An army already bonded to him through blood and biology. It was a desperate plan, built on hope rather than certainty. But the Emperor was running out of time. The laboratorium was carved deep into the bedrock beneath the palace. Here, in chambers that never saw natural light, the Emperor's most brilliant scientists worked to create weapons against the darkness. The Space Marines were their greatest achievement. Rows of giants stood at attention as the Emperor entered. They were huge, each one nearly 8 feet tall, encased in armor of ceramite and adamantium. Their faces were young but their eyes were old, filled with the weight of the genetic memories implanted during their creation. They had never known childhood, never experienced the simple joys of ordinary human life. They had been born for war, and war was all they would ever know. The Emperor walked among them, examining each one with eyes that saw far more than flesh and metal. He saw their souls, bright and fierce, burning with devotion to the species they had been created to protect. He saw the flaws in some of them, the seeds of future problems that would need to be addressed. He saw the potential for greatness and the potential for disaster in equal measure. "You are my sons' sons," he told them. "You carry their blood in your veins, their strength in your muscles, their courage in your hearts. One day you will stand beside your true fathers and help them conquer the galaxy for humanity. Until that day comes, you will fight in their names. You will be the shield that protects our people and the sword that destroys our enemies." The Space Marines knelt as one, a thunder of armored knees striking stone. "We live to serve," they said in voices that could shatter glass. We die for the Emperor. The Emperor accepted their oath without expression. He had heard such words countless times before, from the Thunder Warriors who had conquered Terra, from the soldiers who had died by the thousands in his wars. Words were easy. Action was what mattered. Rise, he commanded. The galaxy awaits. Later that night, the Emperor walked alone through the empty corridors of his palace. The celebrations had finally ended. His generals slept in their quarters, dreaming of glory. His servants had retired to their chambers, exhausted from the endless work of maintaining an empire. Only the Emperor remained awake, as he always did. Sleep was a weakness he had abandoned millennia ago, that he found himself in a small chamber, one of the few places in the palace that was not covered in gold and decoration. It was simply furnished, with a single chair and a window that looked out over the mountains. He had built this room for himself, a place where he could be something other than the immortal master of humanity. That he sat in the chair and spoke to the empty air. "I do not know if any of you can hear me," he said. "The shamans whose sacrifice created me have been silent for so long that I sometimes wonder if any trace of them remains. But if you are still there, somewhere in the depths of my soul, I need you to know that I remember why we did this." The room remained silent. He had not expected a response. "I remember the love that drove you to give up everything. I remember the faith you had in what we could become. I carry that memory with me always, even when I do things that would horrify you. Even when I lie and kill and sacrifice innocence for the greater good." He looked out the window at the stars that were just becoming visible as the sky darkened. "I have become something terrible. I know that. The being who was born in that village, who knew his mother's love, who played as children play, that being is almost gone now. What remains is purpose without compassion. Strategy without kindness. Duty without joy." A single tear ran down his cheek. He touched it with surprise. He had not wept since the day he left his mother. He had not believed himself still capable of tears. "I wonder sometimes if I can truly save humanity when I no longer understand what it means to be human. I wonder if the guardian you created has become a monster wearing the face of a savior. I wonder if the chaos gods have already won, not by defeating me, but by making me into something as cold and ruthless as themselves." He wiped the tear away quickly, almost angrily. Such thoughts were dangerous. Such doubts could paralyze him at the moment when he needed to act. "It does not matter," he said, more to himself than to the silent spirits of the shamans. "Whether I am a monster or a saint, the work remains the same. Humanity must be united. Humanity must be protected. I will do whatever is necessary to achieve these goals, and I will bear whatever weight that places upon my soul." He rose from the chair. Tomorrow, the first ships of the Great Crusade would launch. Thousands of vessels carrying millions of soldiers would venture into a galaxy that had been closed to humanity for 5,000 years. They would find wonders and horrors beyond imagination. They would fight wars that would determine the fate of the species, and somewhere out there, scattered across 100 different worlds, his sons were waiting. The Emperor walked to the bridge of his flagship as dawn broke over Terra. Around him, his space marines prepared for the journey ahead. Beyond the viewports, the stars beckoned with promises of conquest and danger. That he gave the order to launch. The ships rose from Terra and entered the warp, that terrible dimension where the chaos gods waited hungrily for their chance to destroy everything he had built. The Emperor felt their attention turn toward him, felt their ancient hatred like a physical weight. That he did not flinch. He had been fighting these enemies since before humanity had names for them. He would fight them until the end of time itself if necessary. The Great Crusade had begun, and the immortal Emperor, guardian of humanity, shepherd of a species he could no longer truly understand, led his children into the darkness with a single tear still drying on his golden cheek. That it was the first and last tear he would ever shed. Whatever remained of his humanity, he could not afford to show it again. Not ever.